Princess Diana's hidden bloodline, the forbidden Tudor legacy. What if the history you thought you knew about Princess Diana was only half the truth? We all remember the fairy tale, a shy young woman who became the world's most glamorous princess, a cultural icon who defined an era. We trace her roots to the Spencers, old money, aristocratic prestige, a family name polished and respected. But behind that glittering facade lies another story, one far older and far darker, because Diana's ancestry wasn't only Spencer. It carried whispers of another dynasty, a dynasty soaked in betrayal, forbidden love, and blood. A dynasty everyone believes ended with Elizabeth I, but history has a way of hiding secrets. And Diana's story reaches straight back to the Tudors. Yes, those Tudors. Henry VIII, 6 wives, broken vows, beheadings, a court that ran on fear. Officially, that line died out. But in truth, a hidden branch survived, and its shadow lived on in Diana herself. Our story begins not with a king, but with a young woman history nearly erased. Mary Tudor, not Bloody Mary, but Henry VIII's younger sister. She was celebrated across Europe for her beauty, hair the color of burnished copper, eyes that could charm or command in an instant. Henry adored her, calling her his pearl, but pearls are easily traded. At just 18, Mary was forced into marriage with France's aging king, Louis XII, a political bargain rather than a union of love. The French court was cold, suspicious, unwelcoming. And within 82 days, Louis was dead, Mary was a widow, briefly free. But freedom for a Tudor princess was never real. Her brother would soon arrange her next marriage, just another pawn in his endless chess game of alliances, but Mary had sworn a dangerous promise. Before leaving England, she had fallen in love with Charles Brandon, the Duke of Suffolk, Henry's closest friend and a rising star at court. He was no king, but he held Mary's heart. They made a pact: if she ever became widowed, she would choose her next husband herself. Defying Henry was treason, but Mary was willing to risk everything. When Louis died, Henry sent Charles to France to escort his sister home. The king trusted him, or pretended to. To make the point clear, Henry pressed a heavy signet ring into his hand, a symbol of loyalty and a warning not to betray him. Imagine Charles on that voyage, the ring burning in his pocket, torn between his king and the woman he loved. At the French court, Charles found Mary cloaked in black mourning silk. Yet when their eyes met, grief turned to urgency. That night, she demanded he keep his promise. "Marry me," she insisted, not as a plea, but as a command. Charles warned her of the tower, of the executioner's axe, but Mary would not bend. If he refused, she threatened to return to England and tell Henry everything, casting Charles as the betrayer. And so, cornered by love and fear alike, they did the unthinkable. In a tiny chapel outside Paris, with only a trembling priest and a few frightened servants as witnesses, Mary Tudor and Charles Brandon married in secret. As the vows were spoken, a gust of wind blew the chapel doors open, extinguishing the candles, a chilling omen, whispered about for years. Their journey home was a march of dread. Every letter they wrote to Henry begged for mercy, offering jewels, dowries, riches, anything to save their lives. When they landed at Dover, no banners flew, no celebrations, only cold silence. Word of their marriage spread quickly. By the time they reached London, the court buzzed with scandal. For Henry, this wasn't just disobedience. It was humiliation. His sister had made her own choice. His best friend had betrayed him. Together, they made him a laughingstock before Europe. And Henry VIII was not a man who tolerated ridicule. Mary and Charles were dragged before him. And instead of rage, Henry gave them something colder, calm. He reminded Charles that marrying a king's sister without permission was treason, punishable by death. Yet instead of execution, Henry chose a subtler cruelty. He stripped them of wealth, forced them to repay Mary's dowry in full, ordered a public remarriage ceremony, not as defiance, but as submission before his throne. And worst of all, he declared that their children would live only by his grace, denied titles, denied claims, forever chained to his mercy. Charles left that audience alive, but broken. He and Mary had won each other, only to live under the thumb of a king who despised them. Their home was grand but filled with spies, their lives watched and reported on. Even their daughters grew up in this strange contradiction, privileged, yet haunted by the weight of their cursed blood. Mary's eldest, Frances, inherited her mother's fire, but her fate was no freer. Henry arranged her marriage to Henry Grey, Marquess of Dorset, a respectable match, but another gilded cage. From that union came 3 daughters, Jane, Catherine, and Mary Grey. You know the eldest, Lady Jane Grey, remembered as the 9 Days Queen, brilliant, bookish, barely 16 when political schemers thrust a crown on her head. She begged not to take it. She wanted her books, not a throne, but no one listened. For 9 days she was queen, isolated in the Tower of London, wearing a crown too heavy for her neck. The kingdom rallied not to her, but to Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's eldest daughter. Jane's reign ended almost before it began. She watched her young husband executed, then climbed the scaffold herself. Blindfolded and terrified, she fumbled for the execution block. At 17, she met the blade with dignity, her life extinguished as the price of a love story written generations before. But Jane wasn't the end. Her sisters Catherine and Mary carried the same dangerous inheritance. Catherine fell in love with Edward Seymour and secretly married him. When her pregnancy revealed the truth, Elizabeth I declared the union invalid, branded her children illegitimate, and locked her away until grief consumed her. She died at 27, another casualty of Tudor paranoia. The youngest sister, Mary Grey, was mocked for her appearance, born small, with a twisted spine. Considered harmless, she chose love over politics, marrying a man far below her rank. Elizabeth's response was swift: house arrest until death. Again and again, this family was punished. Their bloodline chained, humiliated, forced into silence. By the 1600s, their descendants faded into minor nobility, country squires, parish priests. The fire of Tudor blood grew quiet, but bloodlines rarely vanish. They seep forward, disguised under new names. And so, centuries later, the forbidden Tudor line surfaced in a most unlikely place, the Spencer family. Wealthy landowners, respected but unremarkable. Yet deep in their tree lay the forgotten descendants of Mary Tudor and Charles Brandon. Fast forward to the 20th century. John Spencer, Earl Spencer, had a daughter. She worked as a kindergarten assistant, shy, bright-eyed, named Diana Frances Spencer. That middle name of Frances wasn't coincidence. It echoed back to Frances Brandon, Mary Tudor's granddaughter. When Diana married Prince Charles, the world called it a fairy tale, a commoner stepping into royalty, but it wasn't that at all. It was history's irony. The bloodline Henry VIII tried to erase had returned to the very heart of the monarchy. Through Diana, Mary Tudor's legacy flowed again. Her son, Prince William, the future king, carries that same blood Henry once declared unfit to rule. The same blood that cost Jane Grey her head, the same blood Elizabeth I tried to cage. History doesn't end, it circles. Mary Tudor's secret choice in a French chapel, a marriage for love instead of politics, unleashed centuries of tragedy, betrayal, and silenced voices. Yet it endured, and 500 years later, it returned to the throne, not as a rival, but as destiny. So when you look at Diana, or at her sons William and Harry, look deeper. Past the Spencers, past the Windsors, see Mary Tudor, who dared to love. See Charles Brandon, who risked everything. See Jane Grey, the teenage queen who walked to her death with courage. See Catherine and Mary Grey, punished for following their hearts. Their story never died, it waited. Until Diana brought it home, as the people's princess, but also as the Tudors' revenge.